What do you get when you cross Uncharted, the first Plague Tale, The Last of Us, and that weird and unstable friend that always seems to never quite fully understand when to leave you alone and makes it all very awkward? Well, you get the visually stunning, freaked out, and a jacked up sequel to the aforementioned Plague Tale, a Plague Tale Requiem. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, imagine that friend again. Like, imagine he's me. Big, muscular, full of potential in life, and being as gorgeous as the day is long, and very capable. But I'll occasionally just flip out sometimes and slow you down wherever you go, and I'll definitely not know when to just back off and let the words I've said sink in for even a second. It's not all bad. It's quite good, actually. It's just that the idea of hanging out with me is better than actually doing so. So enough with the metaphors. Remember the first game in the series? A lot of us do. It was pretty good. A pretty solid story with serviceable gameplay and like pretty gorgeous graphics. Did you like it? You'll probably end up liking this too. If you did. Maybe. I'm not gonna do a full breakdown on either games today, though, but I wanted to do a little should you buy on this game because I'm kinda bored and there's not a lot of exciting new games coming out right now. I'm gonna suggest that you should play it though, despite the rest of the video I'm about to lay out. I'll spoil a little of it, but nothing major story-wise, which will be the meat of the game, so I'll leave you with this if you're planning on going out to play it, or if you've been on the fence.
I am sweating like a hog.
It's a game with a serviceable but long story, around 20 hours in my case. One that definitely overstays its welcome, in my opinion, and the gameplay is pretty much the same as the first game, and it's kind of like the story too, repetitive, bland, and pretty slow in parts where it needs to be a bit more responsive and snappy. I mean, it's a beautiful looking game with some horrible optimization right now. Even with my i9 and a 3080, I could not hold a straight 60 with 1080p. I did play this on 4K with DLSS enabled at performance, actually, with 1 or 2 settings lowered, and it barely hung together. The tech or the engine is pretty bad, plain and simple, but the game is pretty good underneath it all, but maybe wait for some performance patches if they even bother. And you'll be taken on a pretty decent adventure through 13th century France with mystical and mythical elements following you along on this bizarre, grandiose, and sometimes a bit odd adventure. Now let's start with the story. This game takes place pretty much right after the first one, a few months after, where our party is now fleeing the game's previous location, Guyenne. Amicia, Hugo, and Lucas are trekking someplace when Lucas travels back and the brother-sister duo discovers a castle not long after. This is kind of where the story kicks off, after finding the inhabitants of this castle, like, slaughtered.
Monsieur!
Hey!
What's going on?
How many of you are there?
Wait! We didn't mean to trespass. We fell here by accident. We'll leave if you show us how.
Lies!
I swear! I don't know what's happening here, but we have nothing to do with it.
Lies! You bloody thieves! I'll cut you to pieces!
Run!
And it'll set off the group on their adventure for a cure for Hugo. He's still affected by the Prima Macula, or just Macula as they refer to it in the game as, from the last game. And it's this mythical and mystical illness that lets him control the swarm of rats that plague the land. They're both, like, intertwined, and he's becoming more and more weak, apparently. Like, dying, in fact, as the doctors have previously said in the first game. And he has these dreams about an island that the party decides to find, and that's the main story of the game. It really makes sure to throw you into a whole variety of scenarios, locations, and settings. But it all kind of falls flat sometimes, after a while at least, when you do the same things at every location. And the story is still kind of the same, with little in terms of like twists or turns. Save for a few minor ones that I enjoyed a lot, actually. At many of the points in the story, I was even able to like call out the upcoming twists, if you will. Even some of the lines that characters would utter at various points in the game. That's not good. It's not that the story isn't interesting. I was fascinated enough to see where it ended. Like, I played it all the way through, and some of that interest spawned from my time with the previous game, I think. But halfway through, I wished that whatever chapter I was on was the penultimate, or the last one. And I wished that for the next chapter, and the one after that. It's a long game, but it's not really that long. I spent 20 hours on this, but it felt so much longer. I mean, like I said, it's a long game, which I normally wouldn't complain about. But I think with what I'm about to state in the video, it'll make sense as to why I dislike the length so much. That's like one of the biggest problems I had with the game. It doesn't really matter where you are, in the city, in the wild, in a courtyard, or in an idyllic seaside town. You will always pretty much be doing the same things, like moving carts, lighting fires, crawling underneath carts to hide, jumping up and down ledges, and solving very mundane puzzles with your sling. I guess you can call it a action-adventure puzzle game, but the puzzles are so mediocre and light that I don't think it falls underneath that category. It's not that these things are necessarily bad in any way. Like, I've already mentioned The Last of Us in the intro to this video, and it's like one of my top 3 games ever. That game has very repetitive gameplay, but the story and characters really push that gameplay from serviceable to okay. Stray, which I did a video on last, I praised for being somewhat easy. So why does it not come together here in Plague Tale, the gameplay? Well, I have a few theories. The pacing is one of them, but more so it's the pace that is a problem most of the time. The physical pace in which you travel. Often you are forced to walk for long periods of time in this game, and that's somewhat okay. I love taking in the sights and explore, but when you have to do your own exploration at a snail's pace because the game's like told you so, it becomes an even sadder affair when you're then also forced to look at slow animations and wait for your companions and have this little cyst attached to you by the hip and slowing you down even more than you were on your own. I often told myself that I wanted some time alone in this game, because you're always accompanied by someone except for maybe an hour total, I feel like, at least. And those are some of the best times I had with the title. I could figure out stuff on my own without constant yapping in my ear, and I could move pretty much freely around, fast too. It was very freeing and interesting, though Amicia would not shut up sometimes, even when I was alone.
Lord, how do I cross that thing? Yet another mess. Calm down. You're troubled. And you know why. The island. Oh, you'll figure it out later. Stay focused.
I think the developers were afraid that people would get bored if there wasn't a constant stream of dialogue here. But in the fear and overcorrection of maybe having less dialogue, they did the opposite extreme. And to me at least, it ended up kind of exhausting. Like, I love bantering games, and in games like Dragon Age, The Last of Us, Mass Effect, and Uncharted, even Greedfall, and some mods for Skyrim. I love those, but there's something grating about it all when most of the dialogue in the game is like this.
Sophia, have you heard anything about the Order during your visit?
No, only the child, the mother, and the father.
Maybe because it's too old. Maybe.
And this.
Sorry to put you through this. This is my fault.
I honestly don't care right now.
There's another roof. Almost there.
It gets kind of tiresome. And it feels like they're all like a CD stuck on repeat. There's a lot of same topics and a lot of the same themes going on, and you just know when they're going to break down and start talking about this and that topic. Other than that, I think the game is fine. It's a fine game. I might have shat on it a bunch there, but trust me when I say it's like the working class AA game of video games. It's worth a play, and I'm even considering doing another run of it when I'm done with this little video, but then I remember how frustrating the sneaking sometimes was in the early game, and how tricky it was to notice enemies around corners without a camera that adjusted for sneaky bits. I think there's a lot of small things that make the greater whole of this title somewhat grating. But I did find a lot of enjoyment too. The performances of the characters you meet throughout the game are pretty much perfect, besides dialogue that goes on and on like this.
Bastard! Damn, The nightshade, Lucas. It's over.
Not yet. I know what it looks like. We can still do this. Just need to find the herbalist shop. Just try to calm down. You won't make it in that state.
How can I? These dogs are only making Yuko's suffering worse.
Also, can they not hear you? Why? Why do they not hear me? Everything from the motion capture, the voice acting, the cinematography, and the characters like I mentioned before, the sound design too, and attention to detail around every corner. Take a look at these areas and tell me they didn't make this with love. Every setting is perfectly sculpted to give off the mood of the characters as well as their feelings or feeling of hope, I feel. As the story does, the environment also tells stories while progressing, and the great contrast from beginning to end is pretty amazing when you put them side by side and compare them to the characters' mental states as well. And let's not forget to mention the bombastic set pieces they concocted for this title. Asobo Studios, they're underneath Microsoft. They have a lot of money, but I feel like how did they get money enough to make these bombastic set pieces? Even just the rat physics and how they cluster and move, and in the later parts of the game you'll see like waves of them coming in. I feel like a lot of time was spent on the tech of that kind of stuff too. It's just, when you take a closer look at it, it's pretty impressive what they managed to string together. It's just such a shame it runs like dog shit. Let's not forget the batshit crazy story though. Like, it's silly at times and you'll sit there and go, what? Why? Okay, I guess they know best. A lot of the twists and turns don't really make sense to me, especially with the characters. They sometimes go back on their own morals. I feel like their moral compass is... Well, the characters also like don't make a lot of sense sometimes. Their moral compass is all over the place when it comes to decisions made in the game and even in the cutscenes. The moral question of murder and killing is brought up at like every junction, but they kind of flip-flop around it all. And like all the time, and change their stance like pretty much depending on the hour.
What are you doing here?
We're just crossing.
No one gets out. Those are the orders.
Wait, no!
You should be dead.
He's going to throw. Amicia!
Oh Lord. That was so close.
You just killed a soldier of the army of Provence.
I know. Why did he attack us?
Look, they're killing townsfolk.
They're purging the districts now.
Gameplay and cutscenes often collide and break how the characters act and how they talk to each other about previous events. I feel like the game is so long and full of dialogue, the writers just sometimes forgot what the characters had done and not done, and just forgot their moral compass along the way. It's very confusing sometimes when the characters often seem to change their mind about important stuff. I guess it's supposed to be a compass for the players to think kill less? But then I guess Amicia will outright say, like, she has to sometimes. This makes me confused on what is okay and not in terms of gameplay and consequences and, like, the canon, I suppose. There's also other inconsistencies. Also, like, why wouldn't Amicia steal weapons that are laying everywhere? Like, to murder her way through the game. She's obviously okay with killing. Or... is she? I don't know. You'll be able to fuck around with your sling from the first game, a range of tossing actions like throwing jars and small amounts of alchemical mixtures like the previous game. And you do get a crossbow as well, and that's about it. Except for like the one-time use dagger, that's like an insta-kill on anyone you want basically, except for heavily armored daddies, like this big boy. You'll be able to upgrade your skills and equipment a little too. Like your skills level up as you do more of that particular skill tree. So if you sneak a lot, you'll gain more perks in that tree, which is pretty fun. And I like that. It's pretty good. But I did miss sometimes having like an upgrade path for, let's say, armor or something like that. You can upgrade your sling and crossbow a little, but I really missed that little extra. It would even make exploration more worth it and fun, because all you'll ever find after looking through large areas or solving somewhat boring puzzles is more ammo, meaning bolts or alchemical components. Or sometimes a flower or a feather or an extra piece of dialogue the developers call souvenirs. Like, why is sitting down to cry a souvenir? Do I not understand the word souvenir? Or doing well at a game? Is that a souvenir? I don't know. Wouldn't a souvenir be... I don't know. Yeah, but that's what you'll find. Nothing too useful. I mean, it is useful, the ammo and crafting components, but it made it kind of boring to explore after a while, when I knew it wasn't going to be something that was totally worth it or more fun. The additional lore is kind of interesting, so it wasn't all for nothing, but still, that little extra would have gone a long way. Other than that, I find the gameplay okay. It's better from the previous one, which, you know, we all expected, but it's still kind of stiff sometimes, especially when you have Hugo attached to you like he's glued to your hand. Which brings me to another point. Why do you have to hold his hand all the time? Wouldn't it be better if you had a button that could call him or leave him? Like, he slows us down a lot sometimes, and I just don't see why we have to constantly hold his hand when we're together. I guess it's kind of the gimmick of the series, but it did bother me quite a lot sometimes. In the next game, let us leave our little turd behind for while we get shit done, please. I was never properly bored, but I wish the characters would chill out and stop talking all the time. Even when guards are like 5 feet away, they'll yapper on, and I'm like, stop talking. You'll blow our cover. They'll hear you. It's like I'm watching a play, and the actors have to like whisper super loudly so all the people in the back of the room can hear. I did have a great time exploring though, despite the lackluster rewards. Seeing what they created with this game and how it all looks, because this game is gorgeous. Like I mentioned before, the attention to detail on characters, clutter, the environment. It's also quite the adorable game sometimes, with some lighthearted humor and situations that make my dying black heart actually feel something, sometimes.
Look at that!
It's so big!
Now I'm counting on you, all right? If you see anything...
Yes! I'll keep my eyes piled!
Peeled. We say keep my eyes peeled.
Oh! That's horrible!
It's... yes, it's horrible.
You can tell the Count is rich.
How?
He has too many ponds.
That is very true.
The polish of most of the game is pretty amazing too, as I only had a few bugs, and one bug that was game-breaking actually. But other than that, it was probably one of the best video game launches in a long time that I can remember that wasn't completely riddled with bugs or broken, other than the performance. I'm looking at you, Saints Row, and Call of Duty. And like any recent game that has come out for like the last year. Why do they release so many broken releases, broken games? Stop it. I just want VIDYA. I just want VIDYA Games. The fact that they have so much dialogue in this game is kind of mind-boggling too. It's a line throughout the whole game that never fails to impress if you think about it. It's actually making me more impressed now. Yeah. And that's pretty insane. Because they did write dialogue for a whole bunch of characters throughout the title. You know what? It's more impressive than annoying, actually. But you will notice it, that there will be like a non-stop stream of people talking all the time. Oh hey, and by the way, this game will look absolutely insane with the upcoming ray tracing update. If it wasn't cancelled, I'm gonna put that on screen. If it is. I heard some rumors about that, but we're just gonna have to see. Because look at this. Imagine, this looks ray traced already. Well, do we really need ray tracing then? I'll leave that up to you. It's just such a damn shame it runs like absolute dog water. I mean, look at this. Look at it. Imagine playing this on like a 120 hertz like monitor. 4K. Yummy. Having written this little script, I noticed that there's more negatives than positives. I think the game is overall good and worth a play, but definitely go into it without, or with the mindset that it'll be very slow. It'll be a slow journey that follows pretty much a straight line the entire time with little variation in terms of gameplay. Which is totally fine, but just go in and knowing that. Because the production quality is so high quality, but it kind of failed to make it very interesting a lot of the time. It gets tiresome, I guess, but the characters, when they're not dumb as rocks or being inconsistent, the story and the alluring and interesting end goal that will become clearer as you go along in the story really motivated me to finish it, and I just wanted to talk to you about it, I guess. I see a lot of praise for it, and the average score is around like 8 out of 10, but I think I should maybe set it like a 7 or something. It's so hard for me, because the game was clearly made with so much love, and the attention to detail is like unlike most games on the market, and it shows throughout the whole experience. But the slow pace, the mundane gameplay, and you do a lot of the same things, and the lack of variation, and the overstaying of their welcome when it comes to the story really took it down a few notches for me. But it doesn't make it bad, in my opinion. So I think it's easier for me to just do a thumbs up or thumbs down on this kind of situation, so I'm gonna give it a thumbs up. Like, I would. Like, it's an easy choice, so you should definitely go play it, but I'm gonna do that thumbs up with a cheeky little wink. So you'll never be quite sure what I actually mean with that wink. You know, it's a risky endeavor. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't. Anyways, I'm heading out.
Oh no, don't tell me.
Yes, I got something in my mouth.
I said hold your breath.
I panicked.
Oh, Lucas.
All the living things that must be born from this.